Hey guys and gals, Kevin Bupp here. I've got some very exciting news I'd like to share with you before we jump into today's show. Now, after closing on Fund 4's first acquisition of a $50 million institutional grade mobile home park, we're adding a second irreplaceable piece of real estate to the portfolio, and it's coming into the fund with over $1.5 million of built in equity for our investors day one. Now, when I say irreplaceable, I really do mean it. I mean, this is an affordable yet high-end waterfront mobile home park located in the Columbus, Ohio market. Quite literally, every single mobile home on this property is right on the lake, each with its very own personal boat dock, meaning a very high demand for affordable weekend getaway options, as well as year-round housing for working Americans. This is a true unicorn of a property, and you will not see another one like this come around again. It really is a one of a kind. A few other aspects worth noting. This park is producing stable and predictable cash flow day one. We're acquiring it with an excellent in-place Freddie Mac loan at a 3.3% interest rate for the next 8.5 years. This also includes a period of interest-only payments. Again, the simple supply and demand dynamics here are enough to get excited about. This is affordable lakefront real estate for both the working American families as well as folks looking to lock down a reasonably priced waterfront escape. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Visit investwithsunrise.com to register for our webinar and learn about all the wonderful aspects of this property going into Fund 4. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com. Now, let's get on to the show. Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guests for this week's show are real estate investment experts, Jason Postill and Tyler Lekas. Now, Jason and Tyler are the principals of the Manufactured Housing Community Investment Group, and as you guys might guess by the name, their specialty is manufactured housing communities. As you are well aware, they're near dear to my heart. We've been in the space as well for over a decade. And so I think we're going to have a fun conversation today. Now, Jason and Tyler, they founded MHCI back in 2019 and have since purchased more than 16 communities consisting of over 700 sites. And so, guys, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jason and Tyler to the show. Guys, how you doing today?
Great.
Good. Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate having us on.
Absolutely excited to have you guys here. And obviously we had opportunity to catch up, a month or so ago, right around the holidays. You guys were in Florida and had a good opportunity to catch up and talk shop. But excited to maybe dive a little deeper. I mean, I think we dove pretty deep during that lunch conversation. I learned a good bit about you guys, and you guys both have a fairly interesting story of kind of where you came from and how you found your way into the industry. So why don't we start there, just for those that aren't aware of who you are and your background. Maybe I'll let one of you guys just take it first, and kind of your background, what you did prior to manufactured housing, and ultimately how you found your way into this niche.
Sure. Yeah, Jason, go for it. I'll let you go first.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, appreciate it, Ked. Thanks for having us on and the intro there. My background is Jason Postill. Didn't have really a real estate background. I know my family, I think my dad had one rental growing up, it was Pine Hills, and always heard horror stories. So didn't really get the passion there. Out of college, I played professional baseball for about 5 years. And I remember my last season I was at a pro camp. Actually, I got released. I was being traded, and I heard a big leaguer say he didn't make his millions in baseball. He made it in owning thousands of units in South Detroit apartments. And I was like, oh, bingo, because I knew that day was going to end. So, shortly after that, around 2015, got in, thought, real estate was, had to get a license and go sell. And, for your listeners, whatever it's worth, that's not always the case, right? Especially on the investing side, there's really no license ever needed. But I did do that. I had some good experience on apartment sales, brokerage, but I always had that in mind, like, okay, the passive income, how, chasing checks and commissions are okay, right? It feeds you, but just building that generational wealth, and now having a daughter, obviously that's a more important deal. But I started gravitating to more on the investing side around 2018. Started really diving in. Apartments have, again, been the sweetheart, but I kept hearing mobile home parks, and started looking at it and said, wow, okay, well, where we own now, it's $350 lot rent. I'm thinking, okay, bad times, you can put that on a credit card, right? Essentially, slap $300 on a credit card opposed to a $2,100 for one bedroom. So, I was still on the brokerage side. I went independent. We can touch on the story, Tyler, that kind of leads into really 2018. I didn't own any property at that time, other than, home, but I had a couple investors and was kind of figuring out the space. And I ended up actually cold calling Tyler. He may have a different spin on it, but I went independent on the brokerage side, and it was like my first week. He's like, "Who the hell is JP Cap?" And like hung up on my face, and called him right back, and ended up getting a meeting, and we ended up for a couple of years actually just looking for deals in Florida, and we finally landed one in actually Arkansas, and we bought our first 68 unit there in Arkansas, and caught fire, and we've grown and scaled and had a great partnership this far, and growing from there.
Yeah,
but
good deal. The partnership caught fire, not your first
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've had some property catch fire,
clarify there.
the partnership and the portfolio. So that's it.
No, good deal. And I appreciate that. So it sounds like, Tyler, so you actually had a community. So maybe I'll let you tell your story, because it sounded like Jason was cold calling you, and he was cold calling you obviously because you owned something at that point in time. Was that a community or?
Yeah. It was a community actually in Titusville, Florida. It was my first community on my own. And yeah, it was, I mean, again, it's a pretty funny story, because again, for your listeners out there, I do drink some beer sometimes. So I was drinking some beer with some of my buddies, and it was like Thanksgiving, and he called me kind of out of the blue. And I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, something like that. And brokers at that time were calling, I mean, I'm sure you get the same thing, Kevin. It's like, they call you 50 times a day because they're trying to buy, mobile home parks. So so I basically, I had a couple of beers, so I probably was a little bit more, not as cordial on the phone. But he was basically like, "Hey, look, I'll buy this thing from you. I'll buy the asset from you for the same price that basically you bought it for." And we bought it, 6 months prior to that. And I was basically just like, "Hey, sharpen your pencil, go F off." And I hung up, right? And so he called me back, and I came from the financial world on the sales side, and so I was like, man, this guy's he's got some cojones, he's got some stones. I was like, I like that, because I used to do the same thing. I should pick back up the phone and be like, hey, our phone call got disconnected. Here, let me tell you what I got to say. So he got out what he had to say, and I was pretty low on capital at the time. And he was like, look, I've got some capital sources. So anyways, we ended up, getting killed for the next 2 years trying to find deals in Florida. And, Carlyle Group was coming in at the time. Blackstone was coming in at the time, into Florida. So we couldn't make sense of the cap rates. I mean, looking back on it, hindsight's 2020, we should have bought everything we could in Florida, but yeah, just to kind of back up a little bit, I was working in finance. So I was working as an institutional retail broker. And I was working 120 hours a week. I traded different markets across the Pacific. So I traded the Hang Seng and the Nikkei and some other markets in the fixed income world. And I was not really liking my job. So my dad ended up sending me an article about mobile home parks. He said, hey, these real estate guys, talking kind of tongue in cheek, are not very smart. They're not very good at running cash flows. And you are. So he said, you should take a look at the asset class. And so I started taking a look at it. I was like, man, this is super interesting. I mean, you just own the dirt. Obviously, now I know that you don't just own the dirt. But you just own the dirt, and the expense ratios are lower, and it's pretty recession resilient. Or recession resistant, I should say. And so I started looking into it, and bought Sheridan in 2018. And then moved to Arkansas, actually Little Rock, to kind of manage the portfolio out here. And we bought 68 units in 2020, and bought a whole bunch more properties, and found some great arbitrage out here in Arkansas. There are a lot of problems, don't get me wrong, a lot of problems, but because the tenant base out here is pretty tough. But we found, we bought properties for, our average price per pad probably till 2022 was under 20,000 a pad. So, again, we're capturing some yield, but we do. We got some stories, put it that way.
No, fantastic. And I appreciate that, the background, both of you. And so just to get some clarity there. So you guys saw an opportunity in partnering together, because Jason, you had some capital sources. Tyler, you were kind of low on capital. You both wanted to buy more communities, or I guess you wanted to buy communities, grow a portfolio. And so, was that the kind of the complementary skill set initially, or was there more to it than that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, partnership. I hadn't even been in a partnership at that time, right?
Mhm.
And I know as you get into these, and it's really a full-time deal, obviously, right? Some can do it part-time, have a job for sure, right? But I knew it was something I did want to get into full-time. I mean, Tyler was an expert in the space, right? I had the apartment background, but I was still learning the space pretty well. But it wasn't like we met and then we said, "Oh, great, we're going to be partners." Like it was almost like working together to see each other's work ethic. I mean, he's one of the hardest workers
Yeah.
I've ever met. And then having some other partners or seeing, oh, a buddy from high school thinks it's cool, but wants to make there was an alignment there that was like our goals just, without telling, it was like, oh, he wanted to get to 10,000. I want to get to 10,000. It was just things were lining up where, it's tough to find some of those like-minded people. So
Yeah.
having the resources in that space, I had some value on, direct, obviously cold calling. That's how we met. So he knew, okay, I could probably scrub up some deals. Yeah, I had some capital sources
Mhm.
with some investors I met through the brokerage network, and so yeah, I mean that's how it aligned, on my
Okay.
end. But Tyler maybe got a different twist on it.
No, I mean that's pretty much it. And yeah, I mean and I think one of the biggest things, and we actually talked about it on Rod's podcast as well, is that we both have that we're not interested in the quick hitter, the big IRRs, exit and move on, right? We're both aligned on, look, if we got to hold these assets for 20 years, and obviously do right by our investors, because if they need to exit in 5 years or they're looking for the return of capital, right? We got to kind of be malleable to that.
Mhm.
But we want to hold on to these things for as long as humanly possible, right? And we're both in that kind of that mindset and that goal. And so a lot of people are into that kind of quick hitting mindset, kind of that, get rich quick. And both Jason and I are like, look, in 10 years, all the assets that we hold today, and let those assets mature, while we may not have the depreciation and whatnot, that's some tax benefits are going to run out. Look, these cash flows are going to be wild. I mean, probably lot rent in Little Rock is probably going to be $700-800.
Mhm.
And it just let that continue to mature and refi and mature and refi. And so that's I think that was another thing that really kind of solidified the partnership, because it's like we're both on the same track. So that's
Yeah,
just
no,
that.
I agree with that investment philosophy. And everyone says this, right? Anyone that's been in real estate quite some time, and if they've had a mentor that was maybe, a couple of decades older than they were, that older mentor, typically one of the regrets is that they've sold assets, right? Over
Yeah.
the years that they wish they would have kept. And so I share the sentiment of just keeping these assets long term and not playing the IRR game. The IRR game is really, it's a vicious cycle, especially in an asset class where there's not really any new supply coming into the marketplace, right? Like there's a finite amount of parks, and there's just a ever growing number of new investors coming into the space, right? And so it's just getting squeezed, and so every asset that you find that's in a good market and it's a good quality asset, and you turn around and sell it, it's increasingly more difficult to replace it with one of
Yeah.
equal quality. And so it's just, I feel like that IRR game becomes a fool's game, at least in this industry. I feel like it does, unless it drastically shifts over the years where municipalities start opening their eyes up to, number one, acknowledging that they have an affordable housing problem, but then also, more importantly, acknowledging that manufactured housing probably is the best solution, to help solve that challenge that basically every city has across the country. So, but no, that's I appreciate the background there. So I guess what comes to mind after that is obviously, Tyler, you had that asset in Florida. I think everyone, generally speaking, understands Florida to a certain degree, and the desirability and how that has positive impacts on owning real estate here. But from Florida to Arkansas, talk to me about that move. What really drove that decision making of really putting your focus and your target set on not just Arkansas, but I think mostly Little Rock, correct, is where the portfolio is kind of centered around.
Yeah. So, and really that just came with cap rates. We couldn't figure out how to um generate a good yield. And I mean, again, Jason and I, this is another way we're just aligned is look, betting on, if you told me I got to buy a property in Malibu for a 3 cap, but I'm definitely going to make it on the appreciation over a decade. I would say if I'm negative on my cash flow, I just don't really want to take that risk. I'll go buy in Indianapolis, Indiana, or another kind of tertiary market, maybe compared to Malibu, and I'll take the cash flow over the appreciation because the cash flow is here today, right? And so that's what we were finding in Florida is just like, man, we were borrowing money at 5 and the cap rate was 5.5. So we were just like, look, so we started looking at Atlanta. I know you go probably actually you did buy some good deals up the Atlanta MSA. So we started looking up there, couldn't really find any good deals up there. We started looking in Alabama, couldn't really find any good deals in there. We wanted to stay away from Mississippi and Louisiana. We thought that the demos in those 2 states were just a little scary. But Little Rock seemed to be like a perfect kind of match. And that's really what drove us to Arkansas as well. There was no institutional ownership at the time in Little Rock that we knew of. And Flagship Communities now here, and Treehouse Communities, which is run by Blackstone or BlackRock. I'm sorry. So
Okay.
both those guys are here now, as well as some other money kind of moved into the market. But that's really what drove us to Arkansas. Is like we had to deliver some yield because we were so new to the space and we didn't have a track record. So yeah, Jason, anything else on
No,
that?
and just on that note, I mean, once we got into that, again, it wasn't like, oh, it's easy, but competing against owners here in Florida versus, once we owned that park, that 68, it was just now we're just calling through the block, right? And saying, oh, hey, we just purchased this. The sellers think, oh, you paid that. Oh my, it's a great deal for us. And they think, are you sure? So some of these prices we thought a steal, and they were more happy. So that's how that grew out, and our resources and some of these projects were pretty heavy lifts. So we had construction crews, we vertically integrated the property management, so it made sense just to grow out there. And we do have some property out west, and Fayetteville is a 6-year market now, and up in the Mountain Home area is nice, but yeah, it's really how it came about, and it's getting a little more competitive, but it's still opportunity. So that's really, yeah.
And I know that when we met a few months back. I mean, I think when you and correct me if I'm wrong or if I misstate this, but it seems to be like one of what you feel is one of your strategic advantages is also that you guys have assembled a portfolio of a lot of maybe smaller properties that are not necessarily on the radar of some of the bigger players, and so you've had a lot less competition given that as well. And it's allowed you to get some, pretty good scale and a pretty decent footprint, but by assembling, again, properties that are 20, 30, 40, 50 sites in size. Do you see that as a strategic advantage, or is that just basically how this kind of worked out, or have you guys actually, purposely focused on those smaller assets?
Yeah, I mean, right when we got that 68 was actually 2 parks, right? On the opposite street. So it was like 25, 30, whatever the difference is, right? But yeah, we ended up the next 5 were it was 117, but it was an 18 spacer, it was a 20, it was a 30, so 33. And so what we found was exactly that. The institution guy, they don't care anything about arguably under 500, maybe 3, 4, 500 sites. And then the private guy, it's challenging sometimes for that weekend warrior to take down a 60 unit or a 40, right? Nothing against a weekend warrior, but just a one-man bandit and then figure out a 60 unit, that's not too small for them. So yeah, we really capitalized on those opportunities, and there was a lot of them around. And it's challenging because an 18 spacer does not support a manager really at all, quality at least. And we have some horror stories on that, but yeah, Tyler, I mean, that's really, when we have 122 is our largest asset right now in that, and 1 clean parcel, direct bill, all 10 homes. So it's beautiful, right? And we'd love all those, but yeah, that's really how we expanded that and found that little niche.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, go
Keep going,
ahead.
Kevin. Sorry
Go ahead,
about
Tyler.
that.
No, go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and to be honest with you, we were like, we were so hungry when we were first buying deals. Like, I mean, we'd do anything, you know what I mean? It was basically just Jason and myself, probably the first 7 properties. We had no property manager. I basically infilled as the property manager. Jason did the books, the rent rolls, any back end systems, answering the phones, you know, blah, 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 blah. So we were so hungry at the beginning. Not saying we're not any less hungry now. We just kind of realized as our business grew, we kind of realized like, man, like this 18 spacer, it's so small. We got one resident move out or one large capital expenditure. I mean, it smashes the property. I mean, it's a big hit. And so we ended up growing that, and then we said, okay, well, our portfolio's here. Let's just try and grab everything in the area that we possibly can. If we can grab it at under $20,000 a pad, we win. Right. And we just need to get more and more scale. So as we got more and more scale, then we could start paying people better and kind of offloading those duties back into the portfolio. So, you know, again, it's, I don't want to say it was a mistake. It was definitely a lessons learned, and I'm glad we have the portfolio now, but it was definitely, probably could have navigated the waters a little bit better there.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you know, hitting on a point that you made there about size and economies of scale, and you know, if you guys would have just, you know, started buying, you know, an 18 space property in Little Rock, and then 18 unit property in Nashville, and then a 23 unit, you know, another 100 miles away from there, you know, the downsides, even if you're getting a phenomenal deal in the front end, buying it at a really, you know, high cap rate or a low price per pad, is, you know, again, you get one move out, one unit that you have to turn, one of the park owned homes you got to turn and put 20K into it, or you got one of the septic systems that needs a new leach field and that costs you, you know, $5,000 or $6,000. It wipes out a significant portion of that cash flow of that one asset, right? And on top of that, you kind of get what you pay for as far as a community manager, and you can't really pay much of anything to have someone oversee an 18 or 22 space park for you, right? Like you basically pay them like barely minimum wage, and you kind of, again, you get what you pay for, right? And so it's really hard to scale small assets unless you do what you guys have done, unless you kind of really get a tight knit footprint in a location in an MSA, and actually build, you know, hundreds of units, even if they are, you know, made up of smaller assets, with, you know, an individual or multiple individuals overseeing a larger footprint of smaller communities. And so you guys have done it right. I mean, I think that's the only way to do it. I've seen a lot of guys kind of scattered out buying manufactured housing communities, small assets, and just getting their clocks cleaned. I mean, like, you know, it's just you know, one little hiccup in a community can just wipe out the cash flow for a year. It's kind of like going like a single family rental property, right? Like you have one vacancy, you got to, you know, you have 2 months of downtime. You got to replace the carpet and repaint the, you know, this 1,800 square foot home. Like there's a good chance that you probably wiped out almost all of your cash flow for that prior year or two that you own that asset, right? And so, or think of it as maybe future cash flows, right? The next year or two of future cash flows are all wiped out from that expense of that turn.
Right.
And so I want to flip the I want to change it up here for a moment, and I want to talk about the, you know, just getting into this space, and you know, what are some of the falsities of this industry that you guys discovered after purchasing your first few communities? And I'll kind of start by one that you know, I learned fairly quickly. You know, again, we all kind of like read books, we went through trainings. There was a lot more probably available when you guys came into the scene than when I started buying parks way back then. There was literally like one source of education back when I started buying properties back in 2011. And it was basically Frank and Dave, you know, the mobile home park university. Yeah, that was it. And so whatever they said was the gospel, because I didn't know otherwise, right? Until you actually start buying property. And so one of the first ones that I learned fairly quickly were, just simply put, you know, that manufactured housing communities are easy to manage, right? Like they're seemingly passive in nature, right? That is complete BS. It's the farthest from the truth. Honestly, like even communities that we own, again, in a perfect world, which we do not live, but in a perfect world, we wouldn't own any park-owned homes. It would just be all resident-owned homes where we're just managing, you know, the infrastructure. You know, they're maintaining their roofs and their ACs and the plumbing and all that. And we do own a number of communities that are 100% resident-owned homes. But even those communities that are 100% resident-owned homes, they have their own nuances. They're definitely
Mhm.
not passive. They're definitely not set it and forget. In fact, sometimes they're even more of a pain in the ass to manage than the ones that are actually that have rental units in them. And so it's definitely not passive by any means. So that was something I figured out very quickly after jumping into the industry. How about you guys? What are some of the big ones that you learned kind of the hard way?
Yeah, I mean that one. I mean, going back kind of to why I took a pivot into MH. You hear, oh, you just own the dirt. That you own the dirt. You collect on the dirt, and it's like, oh yeah, you know what I'm doing? You hear the tenants, toilets, termites, right? And the apartments is like, okay, that sounds good. And then yeah, just realizing even okay, our models that tenant-owned home model as well, right? And the infrastructure. I mean, even that 122 unit we had. Clean deal, just high level looking at it. Oh, all tenant owned homes, one parcel, 122 direct bill. Well, that still had before we bought that 30% delinquency, right? So even just that walking into that, which we turned around, it was like 98% within 60 days, and but it was that was challenging. But then there were still lift stations, right, that we had to get repaired, and even it was on city sewer. So it was like some of these things came up where it was like, okay, well, it's not as clean as just on the dirt. There's infrastructure in there. There's, like you say, Kevin. I mean, even if they own the home, I got a call yesterday, and the manager's like, oh, whatever units, window shattered, and it's like, I was like, I'm sorry, like, like how, trying to talk through it, but it's like, well, he's obviously responsible for that, but like, what can we do here? And just like you get these calls where you're just like, well, why are they thinking through this? But I mean, there's just those little things that come up where, yeah, you hear some great things, and a lot of people like to just talk about the goods, like, oh, the income, the expenses are 10%, which we know that's not even in close. So yeah, I mean, hearing some of that, but yeah, it's good. It's great having guys like yourself, and I mean, Tyler and I like sharing the bad, right, the ugly, because I think it can be a misconception from some not new guys coming in the space that just hear all the good, and then they don't even know what hits up coming in. They're like, where
Yeah.
did that come from? Like the
Yeah.
Orangeburg and all that. I'd never even heard of Orangeburg. I didn't even know what that was till Tyler, we were talking. There was like, oh, it's like this paper mache, and then we learned that. And I was like, oh God, what? So that was a couple. Tyler, I'm sure you got a lot more, but those were the big ones for me.
Yeah, I got three. Um, hey, you got 20 park-owned homes that are vacant in a property. Just give them away as handyman specials.
Mm.
Super simple solution. Yeah, that doesn't ever work. Like,
Why doesn't that work?
so the tenants that you usually get in there, even if you're giving them away for free, they don't fix them. They usually live in squalor, is what we've found, at least in the Little Rock MSA. Maybe in Orlando, it's different, or Chicago, maybe in a bigger, nicer MSA, it's different. But um, so usually they'll just live in squalor and they'll move in and do none of the repairs. If they start doing the repairs, what we've had a lot of the time is like they'll run into the same things that we've already kind of vetted, which is electrical problems, roofing, like roofs are leaking, the floors are rotting out, trusses underneath the floors are gone. You're gonna have to rip out the walls and look at all the broken water lines because they've been sitting there, so that when a freeze happens, right, that all the water lines break inside the walls, right? So that's why. And again, you got to redo all the underneath the plumbing. Basically, you got a whole new house. You got to redo. So then they start getting into it, and they're like, I don't want this, and I don't have any skin in the game, so I'm gone, right? So then you got this half finished house that's there, right? And all this stuff that's tore up. And then you offer it to somebody else and they don't want to take it on because they see all the problems with it. So either it's half finished or they live in squalor and then you got to evict them. And there's very, very few people that see the upside, especially with the lot rent there, right? To go in and fix up your house and your property, pay you lot rent, even if, we'll just say hypothetically, you could rent the house out for $1,000 a month, right? Well, lot rent's 300, you net 700, and then you got to fix all the toilets and issues with the resident. And we both know that people that want to rent these homes out in mobile home parks are terrible. I mean, they're not great residents, I mean, that's why you always want them to have some skin in the game and own the home themselves, because they don't take care of it. So that's how I found, Kevin, any insights from you? Have you guys found handyman specials work?
Yeah, no, they don't really work. I mean, it truly, well, I shouldn't say that, we don't really do it that much anymore, very rarely, because it doesn't, it definitely doesn't work on really old rough homes, right? Especially if it's in again, it sounds as though like maybe a lot of the communities you guys have are like, they're like 2-star. So, I mean, they're just very basic communities, right? And they've got some older inventory in them, and then they got older inventory that are abandoned with a lot of repairs needed. It's hard to attract a quality individual to that actually has the wherewithal both the money and the means to actually get it done, right? And so it very rarely ever works out in your favor, and you end up with just literally a person living on a bare wood floor, with no heating or air conditioning, and sometimes no water, electricity. It's just a disaster. So we learned that a long time ago. It just doesn't work. However, with that being said, we've had a number of communities. For example, we've got a really nice community up in Minneapolis. It's a really nice, it's not age restricted, but it's mostly seniors that live there. Very desirable place to live. It's in a really expensive neighborhood. And we had, someone had passed away, in one of the older double wides, and it was an old home. It's probably like a 1980s home. But it actually had good bones to it, but it needed probably 20 grand worth of work. The roof was good, but it needed 20 grand worth of work to not necessarily make it habitable, but just to make it what it should be. Right. And we ended up selling that handyman special. We ended up selling it for like $10,000, right? And so like it in a very desirable community, you can definitely actually make money on handyman specials. So I didn't want to
Right.
have to put 20 or 25K into that home. Granted, we probably could have turned around if we put 20 or 25 into it. We probably could have sold it for we'd have made a profit. But there's obviously, there's time associated with that. There's carrying cost and things of that nature. And taking 10 today made a lot more sense to me. And we got to reset the lot rent to market right away. So anyway, back to the original question: does it work? Most of the time, it does not, and we only do it on rare occasions in very specific communities that we know we'll be able to. It's kind of like having I think of it as though it's like having the lowest priced or smallest house in the rich neighborhood, right? It works in those scenarios where the community is just a phenomenal community, and people really absolutely want to live there, and they'll take the handyman just so they can get into that neighborhood. I think it works in that
Right.
scenario, but otherwise not so much. But some of the other things that come to mind that I learned. Probably earlier on, one of the big ones was, a lot of brokers kind of pitch the idea of, converting park-owned homes. And I'm
I
not,
was
I'm
about
not,
to
I'm
say
not,
that.
I'm not, I'm not, I'm not, not talking down on brokers per se, but it's just, these things kind of get pitched in offering memorandums, and, park's 100 spaces. It's got, 50 park-owned homes in it. And part of the business plan is to, lower the expenses by basically selling back the park-owned home inventory to the residents, turning them into homeowners, right? It sounds so simple. Everyone wants to be a homeowner. Why wouldn't you be, right? But what you come to find out is that renters are renters and homeowners are homeowners. It's very difficult if someone doesn't have their own desire to be a homeowner, right? If that's not important to them, it's going to be very hard for you to jam that down their throat and make them see the benefit of essentially being in a rental, paying X amount a month, where if something breaks, they call you, to saying, hey, well, guess what? I'm going to sell you this home for super cheap, make the payments super easy for you to afford. But then you're going to have to repair everything, the roof, and it's a used home too. It's a 25-year-old home, right? Like the roof and the AC and this, that, and the other. It's very difficult to convert. We've tried it in many communities, and we've had some successes along the way, but definitely we don't bank on it. It's not we do not like bake that into the pro forma. It's just a very difficult business model. And I've seen kind of the new evolution of that strategy. There's a number of third party financiers now, like Triad, 21st Mortgage, Zippy's a new one. And they'll basically, come in and help park owners convert their inventory by offering third party financing, and allows the park owner to actually get their money out of the deal, right? But case in point of why that doesn't work either. And it doesn't work on big scale. I got a personal example. Number one, these finance companies, they make the park owner backstop the deal. And so they make the park owner have a personal guarantee in the deal, which is kind of BS, right? And so what that allows the financier to do is to have kind of loose underwriting guidelines on that borrower, and they don't make the borrower put a lot of skin in the game. And so case in point of a recent deal that we bought, it had roughly 20 triad loans in it. And literally within the first 2 months of owning that property, 4 of those triad homes have already defaulted the loans on them. So it's a high default rate because the barrier to entry is fairly low. And again, you can never force a renter into becoming a homeowner if they do not have the absolute desire themselves to be a homeowner. So, um, outside of that, I think maybe one of the other things that, and this will be the last one, and we'll move on here, but is the infill. Again, not to harp on broker pro formers or OMs, but hey, it's 100 space park. It's got 30 vacant lots, and literally just by bringing in 30 homes, increase the NOI by $100,000 a year, whatever the numbers are. And infill, I mean, while very doable and manageable, like logistically it has challenges, and it's very capital intensive, right? And so like it's not as easy as just saying, hey, Mr. Mobile home dealer, I need 30 homes, and please deliver them, hook them up, and let me know when they're ready, right? Like there's a whole team effort that goes into not just buying the homes, but financing the homes and getting them set, getting certificate of occupancies and having them ready to actually move in, and then the whole marketing aspect of it comes into play, of actually marketing 30 homes, and then how quick can the market absorb it, right? How fast can that local marketplace absorb 10, 20, 30 new homes, right? And if you're in like a secondary, tertiary market, it might take some time. On top of that, you got seasonality that comes in with it, right? If you're in a Four Seasons type of location, really people move or buy homes or rent new homes, or kind of like make that move out of the 4 seasons of the year, right? And so like you kind of have this limited bandwidth to really get those homes occupied before they're sitting empty for the winter time. And so anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, but those are some of the big ones that I learned within a few years of being in the industry. But again, it all takes
Kevin.
refinement, and you learn a lot over time. But those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was going to touch on converting park-owned homes. I was going to do infill, and then sorry, this the last one I was just going to say was water lines and sewer lines under a home, right? Hey, tenant-owned home, you got everything from the ground up, right? We got everything from the ground below. Well, the amount of times we've gone in and fixed water lines, like after a freeze, when it's a tenant-owned home, because they don't have any water coming into their house, and they don't have the money or the expertise or the will to go in and fix their water lines, it's a lot. And you got to make that decision as a property owner. You can say, hey, you can go without water, and then you might have a tenant-owned home that you got to refill, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in shambles. Or you say, I'm going to eat the $200 plumbing cost because the water line's broken at the right above the meter or right below the meter, right?
Yep.
And I'm just going to fix this just to save this tenant-owned home so they stay, right? And if it's below the meter, right, save me an enormous water bill. So I think the water line thing is huge, because you're like, oh, well, it's pretty cut and dry. They should be fixing their own water lines. They own the home. They own everything above the ground. But it doesn't work out like that ever.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if they're in a home, if they're in a home, and it doesn't have a lot of perceived value to them, although it's the roof over their head. But I mean, if they barely make enough to just pay their lot rent and their electricity on a monthly basis, and they don't really care for the home they live in, and they don't put a lot of perceived value on it, then when shit really hits the fan, literally in the sense of what we might be talking about here with plumbing lines being broken, I mean, they might just get up and leave, right? Like they might just find it, be more beneficial to go move with a friend, or maybe they go to the other trailer park in town that's giving away free handyman specials, right? Like that's literally that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
Or go to a motel, or a long stay motel or something like that. No, that's all valid points. And again, just the nuance. Every industry has its own unique nuances. Those are just some of the ones in the manufactured housing space. So like, again, I think it's, don't believe everything you read, or don't believe everything you hear, as far as like, it's just a passive investment. And there's multiple different types of parks, right? Like we just, you guys kind of mentioned you've got a little bit more of a challenging tenant base. You have a number of park owned homes that have renters, and some of these like 2-star, mobile home parks. It's a very different, that is a different business model. To a certain degree, it's a different business model than that of maybe the 4-star community I mentioned that we own in Minneapolis, right? In the St. Paul area up there. It's just a different demographic. Like we never have collections issues in that park, but we've got other issues, right? We've got other, just this tenant relation challenges with the tenant base. They're a good tenant base because they pay on time, but they've got other challenges that are associated with them being our residents. But so there's no perfect business model, but it does vary to a certain degree. So switching gears a little bit here before we work to wrap this up, guys. What you've been at it now for I guess going on 4 years now. What would you say, just generally speaking, in your eyes, per your business model, what do you see as being the biggest opportunity or opportunities in this sector over the coming years? Like, what are you guys excited about?
Yeah, I mean, this space is exciting. I mean, it's not exciting to see, when we take a park, they want to condemn it and bulldoze it, right? But when they're tearing down more of these than they're building, right? I mean, that's opportunity for us, especially when in the last 3-4 years we've been a lot of outbound. I mean, sellers are now coming to us, and our deal flow is picking up pretty good. So we feel if we continue to pick these up, and I mean, again, our average lot rent across the Little Rock was $350. I mean, that 5-10 years, I mean, it's still well below. So I mean, the opportunity there is to still get those small mid-size. I mean, we do have some larger opportunities, but yeah, I just think that the space is it's going to continue to be in huge demand, because everybody likes to talk about, oh, we need the affordable housing crisis, but then they bulldoze a park and put up those A-class apartment buildings that is not affordable. So yeah, I think the opportunity just can't really see the end to it, but. Yeah, we're going to still continue what we're doing. And again, the larger assets, yes, we're coming across those more easier to manage, but there's still a lot of opportunity in those mid-size for sure.
Yeah. How about you, Tyler? Anything you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited, honestly, for as and again, I know there's going to be some snowflakes out there that are going to be mad at this, but I'm pretty excited about rental rates continuing to increase. And the reason for that is because then you can actually get some professional management into these properties that maybe have been forgotten, like the properties that Jason and I took over. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have used their human capital to buy those properties and fix them. I mean, like there was a property we bought that you couldn't drive an M1 Abrams tank through it because the potholes were so big. I mean, like it hadn't been paved in 35 years. And so we used our own kind of human capital to go in there and again, manage these properties, build kind of build the portfolio, et cetera. But I'm excited for the lot rent to get higher because I think the professional management in the mobile home park space will completely shift the entire understanding and public perception of the space. And by the time that happens, right, I mean, the opportunity will probably be gone, just like it is in apartments, right? But that's really what I'm excited for. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for just kind of, not selfishly, but I'm excited for new operators to come into the space, because I think a lot of these parks will start seeing new home inventory start coming in, and that'll completely shift the dynamic of mobile home parks as well, and kind of the perception. So I mean, again, I'm excited about the optics of the asset class on a go-forward basis. I am. It's going to be really exciting, probably decade for us park owners that got in early and kind of cut our teeth with some of these heavy lifts, with all the kicking out all the meth heads and prostitutes and gun runners and, backyard fighting rings we've run into. People have had literally like the Kimbo Slice, but in Little Rock. We booted them out of our properties, so like, guys who cut their teeth. I think we're going to find this new generation of park owner is not only going to benefit financially, but benefit for our tenant base as well. Better infrastructure, better roads, better homes, et cetera. So that's what
I agree with you there. It sounds like you guys need to have your concealed weapons permits. Maybe you do.
I'm looking at my pistol right now. So
that's funny.
Yeah. I've
Deal.
got it. Yep.
Well, no, that all great, guys, and again, really appreciate you coming on here and kind of sharing your story. And you guys have done a lot in a short period of time, so be very proud of what you've been able to build. Again, just in a couple of years. So, and I personally know all the hard work and the long nights and long weekends, and just the craziness that goes into this, building a quality, not just community, but a portfolio. So kudos to both of you guys for making that happen. So for those that want to learn, guys, those that want to learn more about your story, or get in touch with you, or just be in the loop of new opportunities coming your way, and to stay in touch with you, where's the best place to track both you guys down?
Yeah, I mean, our website, MHCIgroup.com, usually has our contacts. Usually we put our deal flow on there, but Tyler put some good posts on LinkedIn, MHCI Group, or personal posts just on the operational. He's on the ground, so he's really in there hearing a lot of those stories to share. But yeah, email our website, or Tyler, if you got any other ways.
Yeah, MHCIgroup.com. You can visit that. It's got a lot of our upcoming deals. We use a software called Syndication Pro. We got 135 units under contract right now, so we're raising capital for that. So you can visit that. And then, yeah, we got some interesting content on LinkedIn as well. As Jason was saying, I've got some pretty interesting stories about how tenants have tried to roundhouse me and fallen down steps, or managers have called me in the middle of the night with guys with the axes in their hand and everything else under the sun. Kevin, I'm sure you got the same sort of stuff.
It's good that you're a man of large stature, though. So I'm sure
that
goes a long way.
That doesn't seem to dissuade anybody, though, here at Little Rock. They're still coming at me, So, but yeah, just go visit our LinkedIn, visit our website, Tyler at MHCIgroup.com as well, if you want to email us, or Jason MHCI Group. So that's pretty much it.
All righty. Well, Tyler and Jason, appreciate you guys. Appreciate you coming on, and best wishes to you.
Hey, thanks for having us, Kevin. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care now.